let's talk about Sheehan, not the scene, now.
Yeah.
So this is the smallest cast I think I've seen from you. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I had the two character play with the Mel Hardenberger character. Remember?
What was the title?
That was the. Let me go back here. I forget my own plays. That was A Woman of No Consequence.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay. This one is Danny Wagner, then Olivia and Charlotte, and then basically Shinzen Zion's surrogate, fictional surrogate.
Although he finally, after 25 plays, he was mentioned, I think, in the first play by Megan Morrow, I think, and then 25 plays later, he actually gets to speak a few lines.
No, and Shin said that he was oddly accurate, his portrayal in this play. The thing too with this one is Charlotte explores her progeny, where eventually it was revealed that Danny did actually sire a child. But I want to discuss some of the elements of this. It's basically another one of those circular plays. I didn't mention in Not Reached by the Frost that you have this circular element where you begin with the three males and then you end with the three males. This one has the same element, but it seems like whenever a memory is used in any of your works, it's slightly off kilter the second time that it's referenced, or the third, or what have you. This is the same here, where some dialogue is changed. I can recall that used in Theodore too, where you have the funeral scene and then you have the reveal of Theodore at the end of the play.
Well, I've done that a number of times in plays, but that also goes back to the big novel. I mean, the whole bit in lit section, the 900 plus thousand words.
Yeah, I was thinking that where what's his name? The actor.
Yeah, and also the Tony Luft scenes at Christmas. And there's that scene in the whole bit of lit chapter where there's a whole hallway full of bits walking this way and that way. You know, we end up with dozens of Bit von Reingels walking around Dennis Hopper's floor, and in a sense, I go back to the well. One of the plays you haven't read yet, the Maydeen character. I do that. I have scenes where we get like 7 scenes, and the scene 1 ends, maybe at 10 minutes. Then we get that 10 minutes replayed with another 4 minutes, and then we get the 14 minutes with another 4 minutes, and we get a revelation of what she went through when her brother died. And so you'll see that throughout these plays. That's a way to play with time, to play with what people remember. And it goes back, it's a much more complex and much more compelling thing than simply, say, Waiting for Godot, which basically there's only a slight difference between the first and second halves.
So speak a little bit about this. Did you initially start off with the idea of Shin being the child, and then you developed it? Because I recall you giving me the initial idea of something around using Shin as perhaps the child that you found out was in Singapore, and him contacting you out of nowhere.
No, I never had. I don't recall ever saying that to you. I've never even spoken to Shin. I've only heard his voice, that one little poem recording of the Wall.
I know your initial idea was for something along the lines of finding out that someone on the E-list was your child, and.
Oh no! You're thinking of a play that I'm going to do. That's a play that I'm going to do called Landon, where this boy that my mother used to babysit in the late 90s, early O's, contacted me, and I find out that his Oma is my mom. The woman he thought was related to him turns out to be my mother before she died. And so you may be mixing those two up. But no, I always had the idea, because this is again based on an incident that happened decades ago, about 3 years before I met Jessica, when my natural brother got married. Me and this one girl, my father, who had some money, he was he owned an insurance company, or was an executive, whatever the hell he did. And so he put everyone up at this hotel the night before the wedding of my natural brother. And there were about I don't know, 7 or 8 girls that stayed in this one big sort of dorm-like room, and then the boys stayed there. And since I don't drink, the rest of them went out having, the bachelor party and whatnot. And I said, yeah, okay, I'm just going to go to sleep, read a little bit or whatnot. And one of the girls actually stayed behind, and we talked for an hour or two. And just as happened with some of the other ones, and Jessica's always saying, how do you have sex with someone that you don't know and just talk with her? I said, that's the way it happens. If a woman offers to get funky and whatnot, you're not going to turn it down. Well, you might because you're gay, but a young heterosexual like me who wasn't getting, who didn't have a steady girlfriend, why would I not turn down, especially if she was attractive? But I don't remember the real name. So that was good, and so I could make the character. I remember she had a vaguely exotic. She might have been foreign. Uh, although she didn't have an accent. So I said, let me call her something and make her French, Oliviette Fournard, or Liv. And they, just like I did, had a one-night stand. I never saw the girl after the wedding. And so what if she did get pregnant and had a kid, gave the kid up for adoption, just like I was given up for adoption, never told me about it. And then the girl looks for her birth mother. She meets the birth mother, and then she wants to know, and it's either Danny Wagner or someone else. And so it's never 100%. It's assumed maybe about 80% that Danny, 80 or 90%, because the girl has like I have this gap between my front teeth. They
The
called it.
Finland gap.
Yeah, that's my actual real birth family's name, Finland, and it's how I found them because they were from Norway and they were called the Johnsons. Imagine if I would never have found them with all the fucking Johnsons that came from Norway. So they changed it to Finland when they came through Ellis Island, which is the name of a town in Norway. That's how I was able to find my natural family. So I said, let's have this go. But also, uh, I won't get into it, but the name that I gave for the presumed daughter, Charlotte Lynn Perry, is a name that is very important to a real life girl that I knew. And so I gave her that because the irony of using her name as my daughter, because the very first poem that I ever wrote was to a girl with that name, and it was called A Chance. It was a piece of doggerel. This was back in 1984. So I had the daughter, the Charlotte character, writing a poem called A Chance for Boys. So
Yes.
that's my way of taking from my own past and whatnot. But the relationship here between the two women, I think, is interesting because unlike other mother and daughter relationships that I had, unlike, let's say, Fantasia and her mother, who grew up together, these two women don't know each other. So these two women don't know each other. They're getting to know each other, and they seem to have some kind of relationship. But you get a sense that Oliviette, Liv, is just someone who's not comfortable around people. She's one of these people that needs to be and is probably destined to be alone.
You also use Shin's blog posts
Yeah,
as a means for Charlotte to get to know her father.
yeah,
And there's actually sections that she doesn't want to read because of how you've been abused in real life.
yeah. Well, she reads something about I think the Lujack sisters with something where the older sister had accused Danny Wagner of raping the younger sisters. So she has some kind of knowledge about this thing from a play that if you're just watching this play, you're not going to understand. But if you go through the whole meta aspect, this is another way of just sort of tying things together so that she has this meta aspect there. Let's see here. And then I used the poem Young Charlotte a couple of times.
No, I lost you for a second there, Gavin.
Oh, okay.
But I'm good now.
Yeah,
you
I was
also
waiting.
use the young Charlotte, and you also reference the name, even though you say that it's important. You E.B. White's Charlotte's Web
Yeah.
too, as a reference to the name. I wanted to ask you too about how this works within your corpus, where you have these sections where you're using the Norwegian or something like that. Are those just kind of culled out of nowhere that come out of the moment, or do you set that aside? Because I'm going through some of these drafts of yours, and it's interesting to note how little of it changed. You are a true builder in the sense that it seems like you're adding things on rather than deleting things. And I would say that most writers, at least initially, are probably sculptors, where they're taking as much away as they're putting in.
Well, the play you're referring to is my 28th play, which is basically my take on. It's called A Remembered Field, which is my take on the Go-Go's, because I had seen not the Go-Go's, the Bangles, the girl group from the '80s, and I saw this documentary a few months ago, and I said it'd be interesting to do a play on that babe. And I also thought I could maybe interview. Her real name is Susanna Hoffs, and so I got these ideas. Now, some of the things that didn't make it in there, you'll notice that there are digressions that in through most of the plays. I think I have 9 or 10 permutations there, maybe 12. And then at the end, I decided not to go with it. I forget what I left out in that play. I think I cut back on some scenes where. Well, let me look it up here. Do I even have it? No, I don't have it on this computer. But I was going to add in some more later scenes that I just left out that weren't necessary. But I keep things around. I think, yeah, I forget what scene, but if that helps you understand how I built it. But as far as like the quotation from the Tony Luft thing with the Christmas scene, some of them come naturally. Some of them I will plan out. Sometimes I'll have a list of poems or musical interludes that I say, I was going to use all Beethoven for these lesser weathers of Beethoven, and I was going to have the opening where Henry Miller is looking in the mirror or getting the bad news from the doctor. That had to be bum 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 and playing out. Uh, but other times they just come to me, and I like the I had a feeling that the Tony Luft thing would resonate with the Zinn character who sort of brings it up and then walks off stage. And the sort of pathetic, and you don't have to even know that book, but just reading that text is scrolling. One of the things too with the scrolling text or the use of a painting or something is to give a duality or triality sometimes to the text, to what's going on stage, so that when you're looking at it, and also for the reading, is that you're getting more than one thing. You're not just focused on the action, because the characters can be talking, and if something is scrolling besides them, someone is going to be listening to them and then trying to read, and that opens up a dissonance that can allow for multiple meanings to get into someone's mind. And it's something that I'm sure that there probably have been a few plays with that has been done before, but not to the degree that I have, not that I know of at least.
Would that the audience all remain in the front row, otherwise they're going to not know what the hell is going on with that text.
Well, presumably it would be big enough. I mean, you would have a screen. That's why I say it's scrolling. So it's not fixed. Most of the time it has scrolling. So you might have 3 or 4, lines, and it'll scroll upwards there. And the directors can play with how quick it's going to go or how bad it's going to go. And this isn't going to. These plays generally are not probably going to be playing in a 12 or 1,500 seat theater. They're going to be mostly playing in smaller theaters of 200 or 300 or less.
Well, I think that's enough for that play. Other than some of the what I would say are small moments, like Charlotte going and just taking in the sea air. Those type of moments are sort of lost in theater, those smaller moments. And I think I've mentioned this several times previously, but it's those type of framing devices that sort of give a breath within the play instead of just going headlong into the drama. And as I was reading some other plays, you mentioned Our Town, but I was trying to read some William Inge, and it seems like it's just constantly putting the pedal to the metal of the drama rather than giving any breathing room to the characters, his plays in particular.
Yeah. What Picnic? Did you read Picnic?
Yes. And I watched a production of it.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it?
I remember Inge being a competent playwright, but I also got the the sense too that he just depended too much on melodrama. You know, uh, I think had he had some writers around, but I mean, we talked about that with Tennessee Williams. Tennessee Williams went off the deep end with his later plays. Uh, it is what it is, I guess. So.